Basically, what Allah does or what God does in terms of his punishments that he carries out himself is equivalent to the imperatives and the commands that he gives in the Bible or the Quran or any other scripture. You've conflated between the two categories.
Wait. That's not what I said.
Okay, what is what you said?
I simply said this.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter when God is carrying out a punishment,
or
if he does it via a divine flood or fire and brimstone, or if he ought to do it.
Okay.
Ultimately, if the actions of God are being carried out in the area of punishment, then it is still
Can I ask a question?
Because
go ahead.
These same people that we're talking about, the Israelites, the Bible talks about thousands of years after this event occurred, that God raises Babylon to punish them. Okay. So if God is capable of acting divinely to raise a nation to come and punish the chosen people, then God can still carry the actions out using people as the conduits, even if it doesn't require him sending down fire from heaven. Is there a category distinction between an imperative that God gives to human beings to carry out versus the things that he carries out directly, or not? I mean, obviously there is a distinction. Is there a distinction? Because one is a first-hand carrying out by God, and the other one is through a proxy, like a human being. Excellent. Okay. But they are still both from God, so they're still valid. Accepted that it's both from God. We think everything is from God. Yeah. But everything. Yes, everything is from God. You don't will accept that God wills, right? So we do believe that everything goes back to the will of God. That's why we say inshallah, mashallah, all those words, meaning the will of God is always in everything, right? We do agree with that. However, pardon? Yes, everything is good and the bad, right? Oh, okay. Yeah, we believe that everything goes back to the will of God. Nothing happens except through the will of God. That's not something which is, that's not a problem, because that's something which Christians also accept. In fact, especially if you go into the Calvinist school of thought, it's even more pronounced. They talk about divine predestination. Calvin wrote a whole tract on it. I can give you the references. That's something else. Calvinist, first of all. No problem. And I'm not even sure Calvinists would hold to the idea that evil comes from God. Yes, it does. Of course they do. They mention it. Augustine mentions it in his book. I don't think you know your tradition very well. Let's go back to the point, though. Let's go. No. Show me that, please. Yeah, I can. No, that's fine.
Isaiah 45.
No, but it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. This is. Sorry. Let me just answer him. Let me. It's fine. Go ahead. What I'm saying to you now, if you've studied the basics of Christian doctrine, the basics you say? Yeah, the basics of Christian doctrine. If I ask you the question, what is the differentiation between Arminianism and Calvinism? I am not familiar with Arminianism. Oh, so there you have it. You don't know the basics of your doctrines. Hold on now. Calvinism. Why are you making those facial expressions?
Because it's not involved in the conversation.
Wait a second. Calvinism is a relatively new idea.
Stay on topic.
You're triggered. You're triggered.
I'm not triggered. You're triggered. I'm just saying, stay on topic.
Over here.
So what's the difference between Arminianism? What is the difference between Arminianism and Calvinism and modalism? Ask me then.
Wait, you're bringing in modalism now.
Modalism.
Calvinism is a relatively new idea.
Tell me what's the differentiation between all these three things?
How can that be the foundationalism of Christianity?
I'm not saying it's foundation. I didn't say that.
You just said 1 second ago.
No, I've just asked you a question.
I know the foundations of my faith.
Yeah, when it comes to the will of, excuse me, when it comes to the will of God, there are three main schools of thought in Christianity. Okay. All right, they are Calvinism, okay, represented by John Calvin, Modalism, represented by Monila, and Arminianism. I'm asking you, since you're talking about the will of God and the actions carried out by him, tell the audience, the Muslims here and the non-Muslims and all that, what is the differentiation between all these three schools of thought? I have not looked into it. You haven't looked into it, so you don't know? Well, yes, I don't. You don't know? I'm aware of the Calvinist school of thought, but not the Monist. So you haven't studied it? Studied the other two? No, I have not. You haven't. Again, so good. What does that have to do with the idea? Excuse me. That you just excuse me. That everything comes from Allah. Yeah. I'll tell you. Okay. Evil, I'm answering your question. That means that you have an evil God. I'm answering your question. Excuse me. Let me finish this. Let me answer your question.
I just want to read this.
No, please. Let me speak to him now. Yeah? Let me finish. Well, I mean, excuse me. No. I know you do wanna circumnavigate these questions. If I were you, I'd want to do the same thing. If I were you, I'd want to do the same thing. You were there talking to him when he was speaking. No, but he was welcoming it. No, I don't need to.
I'm gonna cite one verse and I'm leaving.
Go ahead.
Okay, God in the Bible says in Isaiah 45, I am the Lord and there's none else. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, bro.
Oh, hold on a second there. Okay. But before you run away, does that say that God is the origin of evil, or God can create evil? Two different things.
Okay, so let's go back to the point. You're talking. You asked the question. I said that God evil. No, I didn't say. That's not what you asked. Everyone is. No, you didn't ask that question before. What's the question? I said to you before, right? Everything goes back to the will of God, and I quoted a verse in the Quran that says, "Excuse me. Let me finish." I said, from one perspective, you can say that everything goes back to the will of God. Then you said, then you started making it an Islam specific. Excuse me.
Right?
Yeah, you made the cannibalism. And I told you it's not an Islam specific issue. And I said to you, why is that the case? If you look at Christianity, there's 3 distinct schools of thought. Okay, and these 3 schools
there's
of
probably more, but okay, sure.
No, there are, of course there's more, but these are the 3 main ones that scholars speak about in the academy, for example, right? There's 3 distinct schools of thought: Calvinism, Modalism, and Arminianism.
And in Islam, because again, we're talking about Islam. You
Okay.
said everything goes back to Allah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
asked you, does cannibalism go back to Allah?
Yeah,
And
okay.
you said yes.
We say in one sense it does, and so is in Calvinism the same thing applies. In Arminianism, look, you have to understand that in modalism it does as well.
So you're going to answer a question.
So look, this is not this is you don't understand. The problem is this: is that the issue is I'm speaking to a Christian and he doesn't even know his own religion.
Again,
that's the issue.
I'm asking you,
look,
is Allah evil?
No,
Because
we don't believe Allah is evil.
said
Allah is
the
not
good
evil.
and the
Excuse me,
evil go
comes
back to
from
Allah.
yeah, comes back.
So if Allah is the origin of good and evil,
okay, excuse me.
Is he good?
Let me answer your question, right? Since you don't know what you're talking about, let me answer your question.
Okay, well,
So, all right, excellent.
You said the origin.
Since you don't know what you're talking about,
words,
since you don't, okay, you don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
So let me just try to excuse me.
Just now?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Do you want to listen?
Just to confirm.
Do you want to listen? Because you're uneducated. Clearly, he's uneducated. Look, you're
good and
look,
evil.
Would you like me to answer your question? Yeah, we believe that.
Awesome. Okay.
Can I?
So Allah is.
What is this? What is this? It's a monologue.
Allah is good.
Why are you afraid? Are you triggered?
Hold on.
Are you afraid
Allah
that me
is good,
he's there? He doesn't want me to talk.
No.
It's clear that he doesn't want me to talk.
Allah is good, correct?
Do you want to time it?
Because he's
Do you want to time it? Do you want to time it?
What do you guys want? Timing or not?
Yeah, time it. If you say your thing, I say my thing. If you can't have the conversation.
Fair enough.
Okay.
What you want?
I'll give you one more chance. If you can't handle it, we'll do a time.
If you want time, that's fine.
We'll do one more chance, and if you can't speak properly, and let me speak and then finish, and I'll let you speak and finish.
First. Again, is
Go ahead.
Allah good?
Yes, we believe Allah is good.
He's the origin of goodness.
Yeah,
correct?
no.
Okay.
You ask another question
Why is
now.
Allah good?
We believe goodness is one of the intrinsic attributes of God. He's Al-Bar. We believe that.
Awesome.
Good.
Now, evil comes from this goodness, correct?
No, we don't believe that.
But you just said that.
No, I didn't just say that. Let me explain. Let me explain what evil is.
Go ahead.
There's something called theodicy. Do you know what theodicy is?
Not familiar.
Not familiar. This is the problem. I'm speaking. Excuse me.
Wait.
Let me finish.
So
Let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. No, let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. The problem is this. The problem is I'm speaking to a person who has not studied his own religion, has not studied the academic material on the topic. Theodicy are theories relating to evil and sovereignty and the will of God. Now let me tell you something, right? Theories of evil in religion. Augustine has written.
Islam.
No, it's not in Islam.
Islam. I asked you an Islamic question.
Yeah, I know.
And you're quoting
I'm explaining to you something.
Augustine, in case you didn't know, is not an Islamic scholar. So yeah, carry on.
Are you okay?
Islam.
Are you okay?
Islam.
Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?
I'm waiting.
Are you okay?
Right? Because if you have a question about the Bible, I'm not going to for you.
What is Augustine's view on theodicy
Again,
and evil?
Islam is
What is his view?
God evil. Please.
I said no. Do you understand English or not? Does this guy understand English?
Awesome. Wait.
Okay, yeah.
Everyone listening.
What is evil?
So,
what is evil?
He just
what is
said
evil?
that good and evil come from Allah.
Yeah, what is evil?
I said is Allah good? He
Yeah.
said yes.
What is evil? So what is evil?
I asked him
what is evil?
Does the evil
what is evil?
come from
what is
Allah
evil?
who is good? And he
okay.
says no.
Okay, well, hold on. What is I didn't say that.
Yes, you did say no.
No, hold on. Let me explain.
Pause.
Do you want me to explain my position or not?
That's fine, go ahead. But he said that the evil does not come from Allah who is good.
That's not what I said.
Prior
actually.
to that, he said that
no, I didn't.
evil anger comes from Allah.
Let me explain myself. God, Allah is good. Yes, we believe that's an intrinsic attribute of God.
Okay, awesome.
What is evil? I take the view that evil is the lacking of good. It's deprivation. That's why I take the view. Privation.
Interesting.
That's the view that I take. That's the same view of Augustine and Thomas Aquinas and Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim.
Okay.
Yes, it's a view of. That's what I'm saying. It's a view in Christianity and a view in Islam. It's not an Islam-specific issue. Excuse me. Let me finish. So what is evil? Evil is the lacking of good. Like for example, you've got the sun that's a shining light upon us, right? So good in this analogy would be the bright light or the rays. And evil would be the darkness that doesn't come about if there's no rays. That's my view on evil. So in other words, if you're asking me the question, does evil come from God? In one sense, of course it does, because God is responsible for all things that exist. But evil doesn't exist in my worldview. That's the point. Do you understand? Evil doesn't exist as a substrate. You can't put evil under a microscope. So going back to the point, if you're asking a question about does evil exist, so I'm saying to you, if there are theodicies in Islam and Christianity, both religions, which have different ideas. Within Islam, there's different ideas. Within Christianity, there's different ideas on evil and theodicy. This is not a point where you could basically have a different view to me and be in my religion, and you can have the same view and be in the same different religion. It's not a point that differentiates Christian from Muslim. Do you understand the point? What I'm responding to you by saying is, what you done is a category mistake fallacy. What you done when you were talking to the other guy was you're saying that it's the same if God carries out a punishment himself as it is if he commands it. I'm saying no, that's not. That's a category mistake fallacy. You are able to see and demarcate and distinguish between the two categories. If God tells me to go and not eat pork, for example, or not have sexual intercourse before marriage, that's a command. Do you understand? Whereas if he drowns people because they were disobedient, that's him carrying out judgment. I see a differentiation. Yes, both of them go back to the will of God.
Why can't God carry out judgment using people? Explain that for us.
What do you mean, why can't God?
Why can God not carry out judgment using people in the way he does using a flood or fire from heaven?
No, I'm not saying he doesn't.
And that's my point.
And I accept that point. I accept that point. I accept that point.
God carrying
no, I accept that point. You made a good point there. All you're saying is, from one perspective, everything goes back to the will of God. I'm saying, yeah, I accept that.
Well, that's not what I'm saying.
So no, but that's what you should be saying, because that's a more coherent way of saying it.
No, because then there are issues with that. So that's what I'm saying.
Everything goes back to the will of God. How's that issues with that? That's something consensus in Christianity and Islam.
I don't know if we would frame it that way.
So you don't think everything goes back to the Christian, the will of God?
When you say will of God, define what you mean by will of God. Are you speaking about God's desire? Or God's purveyance over all creation? What are you talking about?
When I say will of God, when I say will, I'm talking about the ability to choose A over B. I'm talking about the choice of God. I'm talking about the permission of God. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. So again, God's purveyance over all creation?
No, not necessarily. That's something else. I'm talking about the will of God. God can decide A over B. God can decide this or that. That's what God can decide. That tree can be green, it can be blue. That's the will of God. It's the will of God. It's in accordance with the will of God that the tree is green. It's not accordance with the will of God that it's blue. It's not blue.
So let's say...
So nothing can be, is my postulation, nothing can be except through the will of God. That's my view. And that's the view of the vast majority of Christian scholars and the vast majority of Jewish scholars and vast majority of theists, generally speaking.
Okay, so that's fine. Instead of creation, sure, we can see that God...
So what's the point here of this?
However, when it comes to actions...
Yes, okay, what about actions?
Are you going to say that...
Well, this is not a Christian specific issue, though.
And no action can be committed without the will of God?
Yes.
Ooh,
but the difference I would say is this, is that...
And when you say will, you're talking about providence here. No, desire.
No action. God creates everything.
Okay.
We believe, the Muslim position. Let me tell you.
1 second. Within Christianity, we use the will of God to mean a number of things, including what God desires.
With respect, you don't know what Christian. With respect. Yeah, go on.
For His creation and what God desires us to do.
All right.
And we use the will of God to encapsulate this idea.
Okay. Now, can I respond to that?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
When it comes to actions that human beings can carry out, slavery, rape, whatever the case may be. These things are against the will of God, and that is not God's desire for us.
Oh, I understand your point.
However,
I understand your point.
If you want to use the word will to mean purveyance, as in no action can be committed without God allowing, permitting, or willing it to be so, that's also a little bit different.
So we do have that distinction. We have something called irada shar'iyya.
Now you do. Okay,
no. I understand what you're saying, but we don't put it in the way. Look. We have something called irada shar'iyya and irada kawniyya, which is like you got the cosmological will and you have the legislative will. Do you understand?
I've heard about this recently.
Okay, so this is the cosmological will is what God allows to happen in the universe.
Okay.
Whereas the shari or legislative will is that God instructs people to do, and as a result of Him instructing people to do that thing, they either do it or not with their free will. Now, as I say, we believe in free will. Me and you both believe in free will as a concept.
Well, as a Muslim, it's a bit tricky, but sure.
What do you mean as a Muslim it's tricky? What do you think as a Christian it isn't?
No, because we.
Why do you have three distinct schools of thought?
People. No.
Why do you have Arminianism and Modalism and Calvinism?
Again, these are not like massive schools of thought.
Yes, they are.
They're not held to by the majority of Christians.
What are you talking about? You don't even know what they are.
These are small.
What are they?
Protestant sects.
What? No, they're not.
These are not. Okay, so for example, the schools you mentioned. Can you please tell me how many Christians globally hold to the idea?
We don't really know.
Okay. Is it the majority?
Calvinism, in terms of Protestantism, it could be argued that the majority of Protestants are Calvinist. Could be argued.
I don't know.
Could be argued. But there's no survey that's been done. But what I do know is that there are institutes in America, like evangelical institutes, that do hold that position and teach it in their seminaries.
Okay.
Majority of them do.
Again, this would not constitute the majority of.
I don't know. I'm not saying it. I don't have a sociological study. Do you have it?
But
it's one of in the academy. Excuse me. In the academy, Calvinism is one of the biggest and most defended positions. Clearly, 100%.
Again, I am not certain on that. I haven't done it on a survey.
William Lane Craig he defends the Molinist position, for example, yeah, and he mentions the prominence of the Calvinist position. No, but he mentioned but from his experience as a Christian scholar, one of the greatest of his era, he's saying that actually the Calvinist position is one of the most prominent ones in Protestantism, and he argues against it.
Again,
why does he argue against it if it's not relevant?
What you're making? No, I said it was relevant. I said it was not followed by the majority.
But nevertheless, even the Molinist position.
Sunni Islam.
Excuse me. Let me just say one more point.
Go ahead.
Even the Molinist position and the Calvinist position, and even the Armenian position, to a lesser extent, I will grant, all of them have the will of God attached to them. You cannot evade the will of God.
I have not looked into them, so I cannot.
So why are you commenting
on their
then?
interpretation of the will of God?
So why are you commenting
on currently is that you said that we both believe in this.
In the will of God?
No, not in the will of God, in predestination. And
yeah,
I am
of course we
telling
do.
you that it is worse within Islam.
What's worse? What does worse mean?
Worse meaning that all of you, at least I'm listening, you're Sunni. Muslim, correct? Awesome. If you accept Sunni Hadith, you're going to have to accept the idea that God writes down what you're supposed to do before you were born.
Yeah, that's a biblical idea.
No. And then
that's a biblical idea.
And then
are you serious?
Also adds that you can do good deeds all the days of your life.
You're digging your own grave.
Pause.
You're digging your own grave.
So you're about a handspan away from entering heaven.
Okay.
And then what is written for you will overtake you. And then you will begin to do deeds of the hellfire until you wind up in hellfire.
The hadith you're talking about.
And vice versa.
Okay.
So we don't hold that God distinctly makes you so that you will go to hell and override.
No, but that's not what we believe, though. You're misrepresenting our position. With all due respect,
that's what we believe.
Can I tell you something?
That's what you guys believe. And unfortunately for you, it's a Sunni position.
Okay, excuse me.
You're going to have to say
you don't know what the Christian position is.
Compared to
Could you admit to this?
Within Christianity,
what is Calvinism?
Your belief
what is Calvinism?
And how it overrides your will is far more pervasive.
So what I found disturbing about this conversation is here we have. Look,
are you going to comment on what I said?
Yeah, I am. Can I tell you what I'm going to say? What I find
sure.
What I find disturbing about this conversation is that you openly and publicly admit to your ignorance of your own doctrines and the schools of thought they're in. Excuse me. Let me finish.
How you
excuse me. Let me finish. Let me just let you finish. Let me finish.
Well, you interrupt me and interrupt you back.
Okay.
If you want time, I'm fine with that. If you want time,
I think it's best. But once again, if you can't handle it, a normal conversation. Because it's clear that you get triggered and then you need to get involved. Just let me finish it. Possibly.
Okay.
So let's go back to the point. The point I'm making is this: Calvinism, yes, is a stricter position when it comes to the sovereignty of God. Yes? Monalism...
Stricter than what? Sorry.
Stricter than monalism and Armenianism.
If you insist, I haven't looked into it.
Okay, great. Okay. But what I'm postulating to you now, okay, the middle knowledge that Molina described and even people like Craig and so on are defending, has the will of God attached to it. Even Armenianism has...
In what sense, sorry?
Has it, for example, in different senses. So if you, do you want to educate you on this?
No.
Are you asking me to educate you on this?
Don't run from my idea.
Very
briefly, in what sense?
All right. So the Calvinists have an acronym called TULIP. Have you ever come across it?
Okay. If you can't simply describe if this will of God
you're asking me a question and you're not letting me finish it.
Very simply.
You're not letting me finish the question.
Okay, you're frowning. Calm down.
Yeah, I'm frowning because you're not letting me finish the question.
Calm down. So, very simply, can you just really briefly just run past this is when we talk about the will of God,
okay, so
the general desire
my understanding
of God
is this.
or the purveyance of God very quickly,
okay, fine.
and then comment on
my understanding of the Calvinist position, is that the will of God is so much emphasized that they have something called the elect. There are people that God elects. They call it unconditional election or something. I think it's called unconditional election, excuse me, you don't know. But it's what is
you don't know either because you're guessing.
Unconditional is TULIP, TULIP, Each of the... What are you laughing at? It's your doctrines, I'm not talking about mine.
Well,
I don't know what you're laughing at.
I don't remember subscribing to the TULIP doctrine, but go ahead.
It's a Christian doctrine, Calvinism
is an acronym, but
okay, no problem. But this is how they talk about that.
I'm aware. Just run through it, man.
The idea is this. Even Augustine, for example, in his book.
Okay.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Okay.
Just get to the point.
I'm speaking. You're not letting me finish the sentence. You said get to the point.
Dude. Just get to the end, please.
The end point is this. The end point is, according to that school of thought, if God elects you to go to hell, you will go to hell. So much so that Augustine believed the following. He believed that if a child is not baptized, that they will go to hell, a baby.
That's
okay, excuse me, it's a view, and it's a view that the Catholic Church held, yeah?